Why struggle through a post-merger integration when you can glide through it? Why deal with the PMI integration challenges when you can overcome them even before they occur? Why move slow when you can move at pace? What are the world's leading PMI experts doing right now to achieve profit-accelerating integrations? This podcast will give you all the answers to these questions and many more. My name is Dudley Peacock, and welcome to the 100 Days and Beyond podcast. Welcome everyone to another episode of 100 Days and Beyond. The podcast that's dedicated to merger and acquisition specialists. I would say the fraternity that is heavily involved in post-merger integrations and post-acquisition integrations, but also those people that are deeply intrigued by this specific, I would say, discipline. This special place where people dwell and enjoy their lives, although they could be challenging.
You're selling it well, Dudley.
I'm selling it well. So Adam Smith has joined me today, and I'm really looking forward to it. Adam is a senior strategic business leader delivering turnarounds, which we definitely need to talk about. And I thought that was going to be quite a key thing. Growth and transformational change, formerly UKMD and group board, a member at Valcon, which you have to just have a chat about that as well. And then premium operations consultancy combined with deep technology and data skills, because data these days is, probably for the last few years has been quite key and is getting more so as we go. So turnarounds, data, and quite a lot of other things. So let's kick off. Adam, welcome to the show, first of all.
Well, and thank you for inviting me. Great to be on the show and part of the community, and looking forward to having a chat.
Yeah, looking forward to the chat too. So, Adam, tell us a little bit about your background. One doesn't generally just happen into this world. I think that, along the way one gets drawn into it for some or other reason. So give us that space. So how did you move into it, and how did you get drawn into this world?
It probably means I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But yeah, just share something of my background. I've been in and around the technology sector pretty much all of my career, and that's sort of technology from the ground up. So telcos, mobile and fixed, data center businesses, outsourcers, integrators, software businesses. So I sort of worked up and down the stack, if you like. Also had forays into other sectors as well, particularly property and a few other areas. I've been very fortunate in my career that it's taken me all over the world, both sort of traveling to work as well as living. So I lived in Hong Kong for a few years, US twice, Dubai, and then the Netherlands, a bit closer to home, I suppose, and now firmly ensconced back in the UK. I've had many roles in that time across the customer lifecycle, from sales, business development to customer care. So I've been in the situation where clients have been screaming down the phone at me, it's not working. And to answer your question, I suppose more and more as you're involved in business is looking to grow. There's, I suppose, two key ways of looking to grow. One is, of course, is to sell more in terms of the customers you've got. And secondly is to look to expand by acquiring businesses and adding them to your capabilities. And most recently, which I finished a few months ago, I was the UK MD of a consultancy called Valcon, backed by a private equity organisation called Waterland. And clearly a big part of what we did was helping customers digitize. And to your earlier point, that means, of course, then you've got lots of data to manage. And of course, we were looking to grow on the back of the private equity investment, so we were acquiring businesses. But my experience in integration really sort of ranges from multinational corporates all the way through to sort of, I suppose, smaller PE-backed businesses that are looking to grow, and the different challenges that you encounter then when you're in those different situations.
Because they're all got different dynamics. So if you have a corporate acquirer as opposed to private equity, and also depends on the entity that's being targeted. If it's heavy and there's a big need, let's say a heavy reliance on technology to make it work, Some industries are less so, more people orientated, for instance. But I think across the board, technology is playing a massive role. What I do want to just kick off and use this as sort of a, let's call it a launch pad. And the thing that really interests me is the turnaround side of things, as part of an integration. And maybe if you can just give us a little bit of a flavor around that, because if you're acquiring a distressed business, for instance, or even if you are going into a distressed business to turn it around in order to make it saleable, for instance, or you're getting it ready for sale, it's not making profits. Potentially the balance sheet looks terrible. The let's call it management or the shareholding or the owners are feeling distressed too. Everyone's sort of in the space where everyone's
crying.
in panic. Yeah. So I'm just painting the picture in terms of turnaround. Here we go. You go into this entity and you say, okay, if it's a target entity, there must be a particular reason why you would buy a distressed business, for instance. Or if it's one that you want to turn around in order to offload, but knowing the value, it's got no value. Nobody wants to buy a distressed business, really, unless they want to pay a pound for it or just take over the debt, I imagine. So tell us a little bit about that and how that sort of relates to integrations and even your career.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you use the word the why. So I suppose the first thing in any of those situations is to understand the why, and the why starts with why is this business attractive to anyone? Try and put to one side its current financial state. What's it got in terms of capability or proposition that makes it attractive, either from a strategic point of view in terms of direction of travel, from a market point of view in terms of what the market is going to be asking for in terms of services or capabilities, but also I suppose the why in terms of how can it complement the services and the capabilities that you already have. And I suppose if I look at what the mission and the journey that we're on at Valcon, I suppose that was the sort of the key part of bringing together operational consulting, digital capabilities, and data capabilities, because that really brought together sort of something that was synergistic from a client point of view. And I suppose that's typically in any scenario when I arrive. And I think if I look back on my career, I always think there's sort of two kinds of people in life: people who like the fire. There's a there's a problem. What do we need to do? How can we put it out and then running towards it? And I'm definitely in that camp and want to understand the why in terms of why we're doing it. And then when you're looking at the business itself, I suppose you're also asking the why question in a slightly different context in terms of, okay, why is the business currently struggling? Is it a customer issue in terms of we're not winning business, and if we're not winning it, why? Or clients leaving? And do we understand enough about that? And I suppose if any scenario, because I've sort of arrived in a number of situations where the business isn't going as well as people would like, is you've got to understand the why from a customer perspective, why they're not buying, and also from an individual internal perspective in terms of talking to people who are, should we say, living and breathing it on a day-to-day basis, to understand what they see the problems are and the challenges, and they could be many from my experience.
Yeah, and I also think often, and this is just probably broad brushing it a little too much, but just to use, I think Peter Drucker has said this. The purpose of a business is to acquire customers and to fulfill their needs. And in my mind, often when a business goes into some kind of distressed state, it's getting one of those two wrong. It's not acquiring sufficient customers, and if it is, it's not fulfilling their needs properly. In other words, the operations and the way that it's dealing with its customers are not good enough. So customers are leaving. Potentially, there's not enough recurring income, or not enough in terms of resells, etc. So that would be sort of my go-to point. Would be, why are the customers not pouring cash into this business in the first instance? Where's where the fault lines?
I totally agree with you. Yeah, and I suppose to build on that is what problem are we solving? How are we making things easier, faster, cheaper, smarter from a client perspective. And typically, I suppose, if you're in a customer supplier situation, are you doing it on the basis that they couldn't do it themselves? Because I suppose in any scenario, the client always has the sort of either the do nothing scenario, which of course we don't like, or I'm going to try and do it myself. Which I suppose either of them, if you're on the supplier side of the fence, is not a good outcome. But I suppose at least there are times where I used to think, well, if they're going to try and do it themselves, maybe they won't succeed, so there'll still be a chance to come back later and help them recover the situation.
Yeah, I think there's also this this notion of, if I could just employ someone, just to help me along for something interim, or just a part-time, just to help me over this gap or whatever it is. I want to go into the re-energizing of teams that you talk about, the step change in business performance and so on, and if we sort of stick to that sort of turnaround theme.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about integration work, and integration work often is bringing in new systems, processes, doing the transformation, that sort of thing. You talk a lot in your in your profile. You talk about the turnaround from negative to I think there's a negative £1 million to a positive 1 million EBITDA. I mean, that's probably, that's a huge jump. I mean, that's significant, going from a loss-making entity where probably nobody wants to fund it, nobody wants to provide any capital, nobody wants to work there because they see this ship is sinking. And then you talk about re-energizing teams, sort of just, how do you do that? I mean, what's the secret sauce with your Mr. Fix-It? Because I think when I chatted to you, what came up was you really are a Mr. Fix-It, and tell us what the secret sauce is.
I think that probably dates back when I was, still in short trousers. I was one of those children that loved to puzzle, loved to fix things, and I think my parents learned pretty quickly, if you want to keep me quiet, get me some puzzle or something like that, Christmas morning to fix, and you probably wouldn't get a peep out of me for about 3 days till I made it work and got that last piece to sort of to slot in. So I suppose the first thing for me is to try and unravel the puzzle in terms of what's happening within the business, in terms of from the dynamics of the business. We touched on earlier what's happening from a client perspective, and then almost like walking on a journey through the business in terms of spending time talking to people, understanding where the challenges are, where do they see the roadblocks, what's causing us problems, where are we losing money, in terms of because I suppose the first part of any turnaround is to understand so where is the money going, in terms of what's happening, who are we working with in terms of partnerships, so you can potentially aren't giving us what we need, but I suppose ideally it can help us grow, because I think any business ultimately is part of an ecosystem, in terms of the work that you do for your clients. You're part of their ecosystem, and in turn you like to think you've got partners as well that can help you and be part of theirs. So that's, and to do that, and the technology helps us now massively to be able to sort of to do that, in terms of whether that's team sessions to try and get people together. I suppose before COVID, I suppose my go-to was always to have round tables, coffee sessions, and almost like no holds barred. Just I'm new, tell me where the problems are. I can form my opinion in terms of whether I believe everything that everyone sort of tells me in those sort of situations. But I suppose my background in terms of the sort of the different roles I've had through the life cycle, I think there aren't any, probably finance and HR, although I spend of course a huge amount of time working with professionals in those areas, are probably about the two jobs that I haven't had in terms of as a job title. But clearly in any business, the finances and the finance team are vital in terms of how we're doing, and how we're doing from a cash flow point of view, and from an HR point of view, from a people point of view, in terms of morale and skills, in terms of what we've got. And you touched on it as well. The people want to feel like they're part of a ship that's got a future. What's the direction of travel? And is my career going to be on the right track by staying here and getting people together to buy into where we as a business are going to focus our areas, because I think you have to make choices. And back to your point on sort of integration, it's about choices. You make choices in terms of where to focus your efforts, because you can't do everything. And I've seen a number of scenarios where organizations have tried to do everything and too much, and I think part of the role that I was playing was to hold the mirror up and sort of say, well, these are all the things that we're doing at the moment. That seems a lot to me, so let's focus where we think we can make the most difference. And I suppose I can always come back to clients and people. So where are the clients that are still with us? Why are they still with us? Is the more that we can do to help them and become more integrated with their business. And then from a people point of view, have we got the right people with the right skills and I suppose in the right drive? Because let's be honest, being in business it's tough. And I suppose and at the moment I suppose it's almost like tougher than it's ever been, not because there isn't necessarily work around, but just because there's such a shortfall of talent. So everyone is competing and trying to attract the same group of people. So it's it's tough to win business, keep customers, and it's tough to keep people motivated and driven and feeling like from a career point of view that their path is on the same path as the company's. That term, the psychological contract in terms of people have with the business, that they feel like they're still connected and this business is going to help them grow as individuals. And if I look at all the work I've done over the years, one of the things that I say to people is experience is one thing that no one can take away from you. So it's important that people keep thinking about everything you're involved in. It's experience that's going in your toolkit for future use, and there's no substitute for sort of experience and know-how in terms of what works and what doesn't work, and to allow people to grow. Because I can come in, I like to see myself as a catalyst, a change agent who can help re-energize and drive the business forward, but there's only so many hours in the day and days in the week for any one individual. So it's how do you then get people on board and energized to help drive the business forward?
Yeah, I mean, as you speak, I mean, I'm resonating with everything you're saying, and it is that thing about experience. It is that thing about. But how do you gain experience? Experience is gained often at the coalface. Experience is gained probably most when you have problems and challenges. Experience is not gained necessarily when things are going smoothly. It's when things are going wrong. I'm just
and in that situation, I think it's helpful to have then a fresh pair of eyes and ears to act as a sounding board, so that people can sort of talk things through, and you can play back and say, well, okay, what would you do if you were me? In terms of, because I suppose there's a lot of times if you come in as the sort of the senior leader or the MD who's going to save everything and save everyone, you sometimes have to turn it around with people and say, okay, well, if you were in charge, what would you do? Where do you think we should start? What should we focus on? Why? I suppose the why is all the time. And same when you're looking at things from an integration point of view, where do we want to focus our efforts and what will give us the most benefit? I mean, in my experience is that sometimes people get too focused really on the synergy case in terms of why have we done this, and less so on the value it's going to create from a client point of view, and also from a people point of view in terms of the career opportunities it could present to people in terms of new career paths and that sort of thing. So it's like, I suppose it's about making choices, and but trying to make those choices in a balanced way. So you're not sort of all focused on, we're going to spend all our time merging ERP systems.
Well, I mean, it's also it's ability to decide on what the priorities are, to allocate sufficient time, because in reality, I imagine in practice, most of the people have day jobs anyway. They're still trying to keep the ship afloat. They're still trying to keep customers happy. And in your first few minutes, when you said you also have been in the position where customers pick up the phone and shout at you, what that's like, and often in an entity that's struggling to get by, you tend to then cut costs. You cut sometimes the places where it means now that staff are being more overloaded, potentially with more manual work, where you had maybe a system that you had to let go, but now it's doubled up on the amount of work or pressure they have, or they've lost data or information that they should have had, or people have left. So I'm sure it's a quite a challenge to get into those spaces. I want to ask you though, Adam, and just from a Mr. Fix-It kind of guy, and I know you sit around and understand sort of the problems and that, but do you have a blueprint? Do you have something that you could say, look, generally these are the things we do first, then next, then next? I mean, do you have a framework or something that you work according to, that generally if you do these 3, 4, 5, 6 things that you'll get to an outcome, or do you sort of take that as a per situation or unique situation process? Give me your sort of your mantra there, if you like.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I necessarily have a blueprint in terms of a formula. This is the way to do it, because I think, as you touched on, every business has its uniqueness in terms of its history, where it finds itself. As you touched on, is it a recently acquired business? What's its provenance, which will sort of impact its its culture and the dynamics of it. That said, I think there are some sort of things that are always important to focus in on first, and I think I touched on some of it earlier. Customers, the lifeblood of any business. As someone I worked with many years ago in the US said, sales dimensions the rest of the business. And it's so true. So if you're not winning business or you're losing customers, then clearly that it has a major sort of impact. So step one is always understand what's the customer dynamic, and what relationships we have, at what level do we have those relationships, and so that's sort of the first thing. And then next is what's in the pipeline, what have we got coming, and within those opportunities, which are the ones that we see as the most likely, so that ultimately, I suppose, they then become the must wins. How are we going to make sure that we win that? And then what rhythms are we putting in place behind that to support the people that are in the front line to make sure they win them, in terms of whether that's from a contractual terms point of view, what do we offer, commercially, what can we do, what are we doing to differentiate ourselves? And those are things that I suppose I bring a lot to the party in terms of sort of being customer facing roles, but also as a team, let's talk through what we think we can do. Secondly, I suppose, is the cost base, where what have we got today? And I totally agree with you that trying to sort of cut your way to victory rarely works. Okay, it might make the numbers look good, but if it creates huge amounts of operational pain and customer experience pain, then all you're going to end up doing is reinforcing the customers are leaving mantra, because the service is not great. And secondly, you're going to encourage more people out the door, because they say, well, I'm not going to work here anymore. I'm going to try and work somewhere else where at least I've got the tools to do the job. And I suppose, and sometimes you could be in a situation where you actually end up needing to, rather than sort of cut and reduce costs in certain areas, you need to spend more to make sure that you're delivering and delivering this maximum value and positive experience to the customers you have got, to keep them on board. Ideally, I suppose, locking them into longer term contracts as well, if you can do that. And then from a future point of view, in terms of what's the value proposition that we're going to focus on going forward, what's going to make us unique or different from a business point of view, which then leads to the people scenario, in terms of sort of how do you communicate, this is the plan and this is what it's going to mean for them, and this is how we're going to sort of plot our way through the stormy waters. I can't sit here and say, unfortunately, that it doesn't mean that sometimes people do have to leave the business, or should I say their career path is maybe going in a different direction to ours, and that's not necessarily their fault as individuals. It's just a reality of where the business finds itself in and what skills it needs at that point in time, either to sort of get it through the storm, as well as then from a sort of a future point of view in terms of the future direction of travel. So yeah, unfortunately, you do find yourself having to make some difficult decisions from a people and a leadership point of view. But again, in my experience, it's probably more in the area of the sort of, have we got the right leadership in place than it is, or how can we get away with having half the number of people in customer service or sales or wherever it happens to be.
Yeah, so I mean, what I'd like to ask you, if I read some of the things in your LinkedIn profile, you talk about your earlier career includes vice president business transformation roles with BT Global Services. I mean, that's a large scale. I mean, that's a complex entity, plus senior customer leadership roles at COLT, Cable and Wireless, based in the USA and Hong Kong. Subsequently established Matchpoint Consulting, completing a diverse range of interim and transformation assignments. Thomson Reuters, Equinix, HP Enterprise Services, and even Sage, which has also been through its ups and downs over the over the last 5 to 10 years, and internationally. I mean, I suppose where it's going is, it appears to me, and maybe you could sort of shed a bit of light on that your style is very much more an engagement style. It's a leadership style, if you like, in the way that you work with clients and with employees and with companies and so on. I mean, could you give me what is your definition, the difference between sort of leadership and management? Sort of how do you go from leading to driving the change? So there's stuff from the front you can do, and there's stuff that you have to do from behind. So give us a bit of that. Sort of what's your rule of thumb with that lot?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think I'm a people person, and I'll be honest that COVID and the whole lockdown was a challenge for me, and I suppose you have to sort of then adapt to the sort of person you are in terms of trying to be more interactive and collaborative with people on Teams, which I suppose people I was probably working with at the time probably didn't like, because then you could get random calls from Adam just to see how it's going, which they could probably have done without at the time. So I liked engaging with people, talking to people. So I suppose that's why I enjoy the customer side of things in terms of understanding where the problems are and how we can help fix them. But I suppose from a leadership point of view, I suppose the first and foremost, the role of a leader is to create the right environment. In terms of so people feel like they're listened to, that they have a say and can participate in the decision-making process. Doesn't mean necessarily everything they put forward is going to be agreed with, but at least they feel like they're contributing rather than just sort of being told what to do all the time. And I suppose within that, then there's also the scenario where people aren't going to get it right all the time. And how do we create an environment where that people realize that, okay, if I made the wrong decision, why did I make the wrong decision? Because again, I suppose we don't always have crystal balls to know that every decision we can make is the right one. And in some respects, I'm from the school that a decision is better than no decision. In terms, because again, particularly you get into the big sort of huge corporate environment, and as you say when I listen to it, well, of course I work for a lot of big businesses, and decision making in those businesses is difficult. I used to refer to sort of the 3-month lever. We're going to do something in terms of decision and sort of throw the lever, and then we'll see what impact it's had in 3 months, because that's how long it sometimes can take for the organisation to adjust to that decision, or it to reaches the furthest points of the organisation on the global. We think someone like BT, Sage operate in many countries. Typically as well, they were sort of acquired businesses. So as much as you can do a lot to engage with those teams, and again, pre-COVID, I like to be in a situation where you can sort turn up and meet people on the ground. You can do a lot as well now on Teams, and the technology is super, so it doesn't kind of matter where people are, and you can bring people together. But whereas of course management, that's the sort just managing people's tasks. Have you done it yet? what you're doing tomorrow, etc. Which I suppose in certain instances, if there are key things that we need to get done, then some sort of governance is required. But yeah, my initial style is always to work on the basis that if you need help, ask. And it's not a crime to ask for help, because we don't expect everyone to know everything.
But
But don't leave
sometimes
it too
people,
long, because
yeah,
the other
but
part of
sometimes
that
people,
story is that bad news does not get better with time. So if you've
no,
got a
no, no,
problem, let's
exactly.
let's talk about it.
Yeah, and sometimes people think that that if they if they try to just work it out themselves, it does tend to just make the problem worse. It's how quickly you can engage. But I suppose as a leader, what you're trying to do is open up the doors of communication. You're trying to get people to be comfortable with sharing ideas, no matter what, or what ideas they are, no matter if it applies or not. I want to
Yeah,
just
because we're
focus a
looking at
bit
it from
on.
a sort of integration point of view, in terms of it's engaging with people in terms of so we're looking to be more efficient. Part of the reason of sort of bringing these businesses together is that we want to be more efficient. So okay, then where are the opportunities to do that? Systems is the one that normally comes first down the list, but there's also partnerships that we have, and how do we get more efficient? How can we leverage the capabilities we have to do more from a client point of view? And that's the area I suppose I always traditionally like to focus on, in terms of from a client go to market. How can we use the new capabilities we have to do more, deliver more value for our clients, and I suppose by inference then become a bigger part of their ecosystem in terms of how we help the client be successful.
Yeah, I want to. I mean, yeah, that's a very valid point, and yeah, maybe that relates a lot to. I mean, if I look at some of the contract assignments that you've had between 2007 2019, you've worked
You're
with
making me feel
Sage.
old now.
Well, not really. I mean, if you think YouTube and I think Facebook and a lot of those only started in 2006, if you think about it. I mean, they're not that old, are they? I mean, they're just that was just the other day, I think. Anyway, McCarthy Stone, Fiber Nation, Travelport, Tele2, Lloyd's Register, Sage integration lead, etc. And maybe if I narrow it down to Sage, and we talk about, I mean, Sage is one of those entities that there's a lot going behind the little green logo that gets thrown around, and then they generally started by doing multiple acquisitions, and I know they've done multiple acquisitions across. Now I think in the USA some years back they bought a large product for about 800 million, if I'm not
Intact.
mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a transformation that's happened. They had a CEO that came in. He didn't quite seem to gel with everything that needed to happen, and they had a CEO change again. I mean, there's a lot of transformation that happened in Sage as a good example. In the meantime, their customer base is changing. The market needs are changing. They need to come up with new product or a new service. They've had to almost move a lot of the older generation out as quick as possible and bring in younger blood, if you like, I think. And I'm just throwing stuff out because probably more than I do. But
Well,
tell us
yeah,
a bit
so
about
Page
that
is a fabulous
transformation.
business in terms of, if you look at it sort of, its history in terms of sort of, where it started, as its roots in the Northeast, which in terms of Newcastle, where it's, still has a major hub today, and has grown internationally. And Steve Heath is the CEO there now, done a fabulous job in terms of sort of, re-energizing the business, and I suppose and they've done it, and I'm pleased to say that I played a small part, actually twice. I've sort of been there sort of twice to help the business drive forward, and they've done it by, I suppose, one, being laser focused on who are our clients in terms of a target market, so sort of focus very much in terms of the small medium business, and how can their capabilities help those businesses be more efficient and compliant as well. I suppose a few things have probably happened along the way that have helped them in terms of things like making tax digital, etc., in terms of which has forced all of us, I'm sure more to come, to use more sort of technology in terms of how businesses are managing their their accounts and how their businesses operate in as seamless a way as possible, whether that's from corporate tax, payroll, VAT, all the things that bring people out in a shudder. And their mission is to make that as seamless as possible. And I suppose from an acquisition point of view, yeah, they bought businesses that help them then expand on those capabilities. And Intact, as a US acquisition, was sort of a huge step forward for them in terms of as a a cloud-based proposition. Because I suppose if they were honest, the business had probably tried to sort of turn a bit of a blind eye. It's not coming to sort of the world of cloud and hosted rather than license-based business. So they acquired a business that was in that space and used that as their then bridgehead and the tip of the spear from an integration point of view. So there's a classic example of, I suppose you could almost refer to it as sort of a bit of reverse integration in terms of acquiring a business and then use that platform and its capabilities to drive the business forward in the medium customer segment. Whereas in the small customer segment, they've done more in a hybrid way in terms of developing their own in-house product as well as bolting on and integrating. So I suppose they've done a great job in terms of being laser focused on the clients and then working out how to sort of integrate the product. So from a client point of view, it's seamless.
Yeah, it's interesting because they went through, I think the CEO, the original CEO stepped down. They brought in someone from outside of Sage. I think a guy by the name of Steve Kelly. I think they brought him in. He was there for a few years. And then Steve Hare, who was a Sage, I think he grew up in Sage. I think he's been around for a very long time. He then took over the helm. I think that was sort of the journey that they had taken, which is a very interesting journey. And because taking part in that whole transformation was almost thrust upon them in a lot of ways because they had aging products and so on. So they did acquisitions, but they internally had to do a transformation too. And the reason why I mention that is because you're a Mr. Fix-It, right? So you'll go in and you'll say, you know what, there's such a dynamic at play between the existing business doing an acquisition of let's say, like an Intact, for instance. That's a US business. Sage is Newcastle. It's a UK. It's probably the biggest software listed entity on the London Stock Exchange, the biggest PLC on the PLC in the London Stock Exchange. But from a global point of view, it probably is only still about 4 or 5% from a software point of view, from a total global market share point of view. But if you go and have a look at the transformation they've had to do, it was internal change, it was bringing on new business, it was trying to do a whole lot of things all at the same time. That must have been quite a project. And if I think about transformation lead, design new operating model, you have that on your profile. And that's a fascinating aspect, I think. If you think there's moving landscape, products are changing, customers are demanding more, you're doing acquisitions to try and keep up with technology, you're still trying to look after your old customer base where some of the products are probably 30, 35, 40 years old already, and with lots of legacy customers, and then you also have the new customers coming on board. So I just imagine that must have been quite a journey. I don't know if you have any anecdotes around that. You don't have to mention any names or anything, but do you have any sort of takeaways from that, sort of some learnings that you had there?
Well, I suppose the first one is be clear on what do we want to be, what kind of business do we want to be, that North Star that everyone can rally behind in terms of this is the role we're going to play as a business, and how we're going to add value to our clients. I suppose the operating model piece is a bit more sort of should be like mechanical in terms of how this business is going to work and who's going to lead on which aspects of it, and how can we do that in the most efficient way possible to ensure that we can, move as fast as we can. Because yes, in the world of sort of technology, every day lost is a day you never get back, and in that time there's lots of people, and the market that Sage operates in is highly competitive in terms of new entrants, and to your point, new entrants coming without the legacy. And then from a culture point of view, you're getting people to embrace that in terms of this is what we're trying to achieve, and making sure then sort of from a leadership point of view, then you get the right leadership in place that's all bought into this is the journey. Because I suppose, yes, you're right, the dynamic of a West Coast originated cloud-based technology business isn't necessarily the same as one that has huge development capabilities in the UK and France as well. So Sage has a sort of a big history as well in France as well. So a lot of
with one of them, I think one of its products, I think the X3 product is very much a French-based product, and I think there's other products that are based or developed in other regions and so on. And I think it's quite an interesting case study. Could we shift quickly to your Welcome Group that was formed in March 21? That was probably in the middle of the lockdowns and the mayhem from what was busy happening at the time. Tell us a bit about that. Backed by Waterland Private Equity, you being a board member, etc. Tell us a little bit about that story. If there are any anecdotes or golden nuggets that you can bring out for us over here.
Well, yeah, you're right. I suppose if I look at that period, you think, with everything that was going on in terms of COVID and lockdown, is that sort of the time that you want to try and bring three different businesses together and rebrand them as one from a go-to-market point of view? Then probably not. But if I think back from a sort of a board in terms of the senior leadership who came together to sort of bring the business together, I think we actually didn't physically meet, i.e. sort of, being in the same room. Clearly we met a lot, but with the power of Teams, etc., you could kind of be anywhere for, I think it was about 7 months.
Wow.
So literally everything was, from a sort of a cross-border point of view, was done thanks to Teams. And we're pretty much on the Teams daily at some points in the process. And I suppose it proved to me in terms of how much you can achieve in a virtual environment. So yes, it was quite interesting when we all, in the end, I think because of various travel restrictions and the countries you could go to, and I suppose because we were the problem child in terms of the UK, we had a lot of restrictions about where we could go, if you could remember, which countries would let us in. And then, of course, where could you get back into the UK from? So we ended up actually having our first face-to-face meeting in Hamburg, of all places, because that was the one that sort of most people could get to, and some people could drive. And from a UK point of view, it meant you could fly back into the UK and not be stuck in quarantine for months on end.
Yeah, that's I unfortunately had one stint in the hotel eating the boxed food for about 14 days, which was very interesting. But coming back to this, you talk about achieve the Investors in People Silver Award November 21. Sort of looking at sort of a premium operations consultancy combined with the deep digital technology and data management capabilities. Tell us a bit about the company, the group. I mean, what is the makeup? I mean, what makes that company tick, and sort of what kind of customers buy from the Welcome Group?
Yeah, and I'm pleased you brought up the Investors in People, because that's one of the things I think I'm most proud of. That we managed to achieve that despite COVID, lockdown, etc. In terms of recognition for the efforts that we're putting in as a business to ensure that from a career development point of view, everyone on the organisation had a plan, and clearly the title, we were investing in them as a business in terms of training and accreditations to ensure that as individuals, then from a career path point of view, that they've always felt that being with Valcon was the right place to be, because they were going to grow, both in terms of the, the projects that they were involved in from a client point of view. Back to our earlier point about, experience is one thing you can never be taken away from you, so you can do some really interesting things to learn more. But also, the accreditations and the badges, should we say, that you can get as well from either a technology point of view or from a vendor point of view, that can help you, grow as an individual, and do, I suppose, again, grow from a project's seniority point of view, and then career progression. In terms of sort of what's at the core of the Valcon business, it's enabling clients to digitize and then extract value from the data that digitization process creates. And that could be anything from machine learning, data science, analytics. So yeah, I think that's why sort of digital and data go well together, which I suppose was ultimately was the sort of the key driver from a purpose point of view. Why are we bringing these businesses together? Because that's synergy between digitizing, automating, and then the data you get is where the real value is from a client point of view, because then you can leverage that through analytics, data science, in terms of to help the business continue to improve business from a client point of view.
I can just picture the difficulty in that space, because you had clients that you would normally get, let's say pre-pandemic, it would have been relatively, I mean, people knew they had to move into a digital space. I mean, but it was going at not a snail pace, but it was going at a pace that was probably just churning and was gaining momentum. And then the pandemic hit, and it was all over the place. And then in the middle of the pandemic, or just sort of this is closing near the end, end of 21. But I mean, when did lockdown start? I mean, it was around 2020, early 2021. I'm just thinking, you would have had not just investors in people in that time, but if you think about the time that you had to serve your customers, when a lot of them were on furlough, potentially a lot of them had an uncertain future to face. A lot of them potentially, I'm just throwing out there, maybe you can share a few experiences, are thinking, what now? What if the lockdowns continue? What if business is no longer the same? Well, it's probably not longer the same anyway, but what if, these are lots of what ifs, and yet you as an organization, you're still saying, look, we getting on with this. We need to help our clients transform. We need to help our clients move into a new space. So what did you do at that time to sort of differentiate yourself, to get in front of people that were half in furlough mode and half in survival mode? And I don't know if there's another half, but
yeah.
Tell us, let's go back a bit, and because it is part of integration, because you're saying the world has changed. We now have to reimagine ourselves. We have to reintegrate ourselves into our customer environments. I mean, that for me it must have been one hell of a journey. And if you don't mind sharing a bit of that.
No, you're right. It was a hugely challenging time for everyone, and a lot of businesses were struggling. Sometimes we almost take for granted now in terms of the basics around virtual working and how to work remotely. At the time we had a lot of government contracts as well, where the technology needs to be proven in terms of so we could operate securely. I suppose if I look at it from a sort of personal point of view, that's where your mobile phone suddenly becomes your best friend again, in terms of being able to call people and talk to people. Because not everyone was able to move rapidly to either Teams or Zoom or other platforms are available. So I suppose the key for us was ensuring that we keep in regular communication and dialogue. Our mantra at the time very much was that we're open for business. So from a technology point of view, a lot of the work we were doing was cloud based, and I suppose by definition then sort of remote. We had some clients where we did have challenges in terms of accessing systems, so we had to sort of work through those. But if I look back now, I think it was a real rallying call for us as a business in terms of to ensure that we were there to support the customers and help them, and then have the conversations about, okay, then, well, what else can we do to help you automate, digitize, and I suppose that, there's a lot of new platforms out there, Mendix and other low-code platforms that can help you, rapidly get new capabilities up and running. And I suppose, yes, as much as the pandemic was a hugely challenging time, I think now we're out, sort of, hopefully coming out the other side of it. I think there's also been a catalyst for change for people to think differently in terms of the art of the possible, in terms of what we can do and how quickly we can get new capabilities up and running. And a number of organizations are moving their digital platforms much more to the front of the business in terms of what they can do in terms of using low-code platforms, etc., as the sort of the bridge between that and the legacy, because then you can work much faster in terms of what you can deploy. Okay, it may not be super polished in sort of Rev 1, but then of course you get something out there and you continue to iterate it. That's the new mantra in any sort of digital environment, is get something live as quickly as you can and then continue to add to it in terms of the capability. And I suppose
get phase 1 done.
Yeah.
Let's just get going.
Yeah, get started and then build on it. And I suppose that's where you get momentum, and brings me back to the good old sort of change equation in terms of one of the sort of the key multipliers is initial momentum, first steps. You get moving, demonstrate results, and people can see it in action. I suppose that is always, I think, is difficult in digitalization or data science projects. There's another good one, is that sometimes it's hard for people sort of to visualize the outcome. If you're making a car, you can say, oh, here's the prototype. Not always quite so easy in other sort of
they just see a screen, or they don't.
Yeah, so sometimes again there needs to be that sort of leap of faith in terms of with the client, as well as with us as an organization, in terms of being able to sort of deliver on the promise. And I suppose that comes full circle to what I said, I think quite early on in the conversation. It's about people and relationships, and that's ideally done when you can sort of meet people, have a cup of coffee, etc. But there's also a lot you can do now in terms of Teams and virtual meetings to be able to sort of communicate with people and know that we're there with you on the journey. And it's the same, in any change environment, that people need to feel that there are people there that are worrying about it, thinking about it, and they can talk to. Because,
safe pair of hands, having a sounding board, all that stuff. I mean, what was really interesting is that in that same period, you had done a merger with, first Consulting and Vulcan Nordics, backed by private equity, all while you still trying to invest in people, help your clients. You still had to negotiate a merger.
It's the world of ands. It's and this.
And it's like, wow, that's one hell of a feat.
But we had to get, great, back to the point I was making earlier in terms of, Sage, we had a great leadership team. And, I think I was part of that, and was, of course, part of creating that in terms of our HR lead, in terms of, leading their efforts in terms of on investors and people, the people we had, leading from a client point of view. We rebranded, integrated from a sort of system point of view, and acquired another, sort of the parting piece of my role was, we acquired another business in the UK as well.
Wow. That's just so okay. So we're nearing the end of the hour now, and I just want to maybe ask you, just for the sake of the audience, is what would you, from an integrations point of view, because you do a lot of systems-based integrations as well as obviously people and so on. If you had to list one or more attributes of what makes a good integration, or an integrator, if you had to use that, but what makes a good? What are the attributes? Could you list one or more of them? if I could
From
sort
a
of throw a
from a
curveball your way.
systems point of view, or just generally in terms
Just
of?
from a human being point of view. So why would you choose one person or a team to be running an integration as opposed to another? What attributes would you be looking for from an integration point of view?
I suppose that's a really good question. I think first thing is, do they understand the vision and the value in terms of what they're trying to create? So when we get to the end point, we're all heading for the same end point, and we all sort of understand what that's going to look like. And as part of that, what do they see as the roadmap, not a 2,000 line Gantt chart, but more in terms of what are the building blocks we're going to use to get there, in terms of sort of the big pieces on the journey. And thirdly, what they're going to put in place to ensure that we bring everyone with us on the journey from an engagement point of view. So sometimes people talk about, oh yeah, we got great engagement plan, but when you look at it, all it is going to be sending newsletters or updates by email. So well, I don't think that's really going to get how do we make sure that the right communities are involved in in the process, and they feel like they understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what it's going to mean for them. And I suppose sometimes there might be situations where we might have to take a small step back to go forward together, and people need to understand that we're not doing it just for the fun of it, because if we can bring everyone onto the same platform, we're going to get the following benefits, whatever it is, collaboration, etc. And I suppose that's the sort of subset of that engagement process. What we're going to put in place through this integration process that allows people to collaborate, particularly I suppose across the lines in terms of between different businesses. Client, if there's synergies from a client point of view in terms of cross-sell, upsell, I think that's really powerful, because then you can get different parts of the sort of the two businesses come together, working together on something that's very tangible for everyone, and you're going to try and win some business. That's really, really helpful. But anything that we can do as part of the integration process to make sure that people can collaborate. I suppose my parting shot on that, I think one of the things that I can think of that is you could describe as a little win, but I know it's not straightforward, is how to get people's calendars synchronized. So if you want to, if people want to organize meetings, how can they find out about availability of people in different parts of the organizations? So again, that's from an integration point of view, that's where I would always look first, is how do we can get people that they can communicate with each other, rather than having to send 10 emails and say, oh, are you available on this day and that day? And that, of course, it just becomes too hard and people give up.
Yeah, it's the telephone tag, as we used to call it in the old days, to try and you leave a voicemail, and then you hope someone will phone you back. And in the meantime, the weeks are ticking by, and deadlines are slipping, etc. So
and I'm not I spend a lot of time in technology projects, but I would never describe myself as a technology expert. So I know full well that integrating, from an Outlook or an Exchange point of view isn't straightforward. But that is always one thing I would look at now. First about how do we get these systems connected so people can collaborate, talk to each other.
Yeah, it is a big, and it's also again part of transformation. So that was, you were formerly UKMD group board member at Vulcan. Right now, what are you doing? You're senior strategic business leader delivering turnarounds, growth, and transformational change. So what let me put it this way. So Adam, if you you are out there, I'm guessing, looking for clients, or you looking for people to work with, what is it that we can help you with from an audience and from 100 Days and Beyond point of view? What can we do to assist you going forward?
Well, that's very kind. I suppose, I took the opportunity to sort of step away, having sort of been through the journey on Valcon, and it was the right time for me to sort of step away. So I was very fortunate to be able to have a bit of time off and do all those jobs I've been promising my wife that I would do and hadn't. And at the moment, I'm doing some part-time work helping a couple of clients in terms of one's looking to start a business and the other one's looking to sell part of their business. But in addition to that, I suppose, I'm looking for the next challenge. As I said, sort of right at the start, I'm the sort of person that sort of runs towards the fire, and wants to help sort of fix things, solve problems, etc. So I'm involved in a few conversations to see what comes next for me, and that's for me as well is part of the excitement, and sometimes not quite knowing for sure what's coming next, but I know that when the right thing comes along, it will be exciting, challenging, and so if there's anyone out there listening who's got got some opportunities, got some challenges, then I'm all ears.
That's great. So I mean, if you had to say in a few sort of words, or a sentence or two or so, what do you bring to a company? Sort of what differentiates you from let's say other people that are similar to you? I know you're Mr. Fix-It. I mean, it's clearly your CV has demonstrated that through and through. But if someone said to you, you know what, Adam, we've got 3 or 4 guys here in front of us, what would differentiate you? Why are you as opposed to anybody else?
I think first and foremost is my experience in terms of there isn't much, I'm always open to be told otherwise, but I think there's much I haven't seen in my career, and that I think is the real sort of foundation, because I've been in the front line, whether it's sales, business development, customer care, IT, integrations. So I've been literally in all roles across the business, and that's is hugely important. And I suppose the second thing is that I'm I suppose a hugely passionate person for any business in terms of wanting to make it a success. And I like to think I've got a track record behind me of doing that, so it's not just talk. But I think I take great pride in helping organisations be successful and the people within it be successful, because I think that's the real test for me, is that anyone who sort of works for me can say that, oh yeah, well, Adam really helped me with this, he helped me with that, and I wouldn't have got to here without that, working with Adam. So I think that's the other thing from my point of view, is in terms of how do you help people be successful. Of course, as soon as you start doing that, then that's when the business is really starting to motor.
No, I love that.
It's not just all.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that struck me when I first met you a few days back, where besides being the guy that runs towards the fire, not away, you're the guy that says there's a fire, let's go and sort it out. I think for me, what really is, you've been exposed to so many different facets, just different aspects of business, different types of business. And today, especially with the technology and technology taking a large chunk of any type of integration work, any type of role. I mean, if you're in a leadership position, which is clearly your strength, I mean, you're clearly a people person, you're clearly a person that can bring people together. I would say those are major differentiators. And I, for me, that would be key, that people should be looking at when they sort of wanting to make contact with you. Can they get hold of you on LinkedIn? Is LinkedIn a good place to do that?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, I'm readily contactable on LinkedIn, no problem at all. And if anyone's got just wants to talk about some challenges they're facing, on a shoulder or an ear, then I'm available to have a chat, because sometimes people just need to talk it through.
Talk it through. And often I think for leaders and people in leadership positions, CEOs, chairs, or any kind of executives, managers, and so on, often just want someone to talk to, because and if they have someone experienced like yourself to use as a sounding board and to bounce things off, especially with your level of experience and I'm sure your network across this space is incredible. So Adam, I wish you absolutely all of the best. Thank you very much for joining us today on our podcast. Any final words, any final thoughts?
Absolute pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity, and just to say to everyone on the listening in, I hope it was useful. And I suppose I repeat what I've said a few times, is just keep telling yourself experience is something that no one can take away from you. So whatever it is you're going through now at the moment, no matter how painful, don't forget it all goes in the experience bank.
Spoken from a guy that did did a transaction in the middle of the pandemic, a lockdown, and still maintained a business and integrated systems and so on. I mean, unbelievable. Adam, thank you very much. Great guest. Thank you so much. Stay on the line. I just want to say goodbye to everyone, and then I'll come straight back to you.
Absolute pleasure. Great talking to you.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you very much to everyone from our audience from 100 Days and Beyond, the podcast focusing on the special people behind the scenes, the leaders, the doers, the Mr. Fix-Its, and those that have got immense amount of experience. I think if you look at guys like Adam and look across the board at the level of knowledge and understanding, as soon as you start unpacking and peeling off the layers, you'll start understanding how deep, rich, and broad the knowledge and experience is within the community of integrators, of M&A people, and especially of business people that are in the advice business, if you like, or the support business. Adam is also a technology data, I would not say a technical expert, but definitely have got a deep understanding of how technology makes a difference in businesses and so on. Thank you very much for joining us today. All the best, and we'll see you on our next episode of 100 Days and Beyond. Have a super day wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Hi everybody, this is Dudley again, and if you need help with a future or existing post-merger integration, I want to invite you to arrange a free, no obligation meeting with us. During the meeting, we'll find out exactly what you need, what your challenges are, and we'll explain how our unique PMI slipstream method can help you. Simply call us or visit mergerintegration.co.uk. That's mergerintegration.co.uk, or come to our website, skillfulpursuit.com.